welcome to Formula One and Son. I'm Tom.
And I'm Oscar.
Well, Oscar, we've just literally in the last minute seen the end of the Spanish Grand Prix.
And literally right now the podium is playing on our TV
right.
while muted.
Yeah, we're watching a happy Lewis Hamilton, but we'll come back to that. We thought what we'd do today is do a quick qualifying recap. And then give our immediate reactions to just having watched the Grand Prix and record that for a little bit. Then maybe come back after we've reviewed a few things, given it a little bit of thought, maybe watched a few inboards with a little bit further analysis and see if we end up with a bit of a different view of that immediate reaction from, after we analyse it a little bit.
My first reaction is that I really like the trophies.
Yeah, they're very, very large trophies that are being handed out right now. But let's just quickly talk about qualifying. It was kind of interesting qualifying for a few different reasons. Out in Q1 was Nico Hulkenberg, with Danny Rick just squeezing through, right?
And then Lance Stroll.
Yep.
Was also eliminated with Giovinazzi and the slow cars.
But the interesting one was the Hulk. He had a little incident and took off his front wing and then drove around the course dragging his front wing under the car. Yeah. But interestingly, they managed to get him out again, right?
They did.
They repaired it in 5 minutes.
There was really no point because he started from the pit lane because of the new front ring. They had to switch back to an older spec.
That's right. Yeah, they brought a new wing to Spain. Like a lot of teams bring upgrades, of course, to Spain's big upgrade packages. Fairly much all the teams, except a few now do kind of iterative changes race to race, like Red Bull and Mercedes, for example. Yes. But yeah, he got back out, but was only a smidge faster than his teammate. But then, as you say, received a three-place grid penalty for changing a spec of part in park.
Not three-place grid penalty.
Pit lane stuff. Yeah. I'm thinking of Danny Rick, of course.
Who also received a three-place grid penalty.
That's right. So then into Q2, and on the back of the performances that we saw in Q1, you're keeping on the Renault theme. You're thinking, no way, Danny Rick's going to make it through to Q3.
Spoiler alert, he did. Once again, he was in the danger zone in the end.
Yeah, and the surprise there was the McLarens not having a massive amount of pace.
Doesn't really matter because one of the McLaren ended up being promoted because of Ricciardo.
Yeah, that's
actually,
right.
Both of them, I think.
But both Norris and Raikkonen were out in Q2, and then obviously Perez and Raikkonen.
You said Raikkonen.
Oh, did I just say? I meant science. Sorry, I was thinking science. That's what happens when I talk when I'm reading. But surprisingly, Albon as well. The Toro Rossos were looking pretty quick.
Pretty good pace, yeah.
Yeah.
But in Q3, Ricciardo was not even close to the other cars. He was 7/10 off that. Kvyat, 9th. He was also 6/10 off the next two cars, which were the Hasses. In 7th and 8th, Grosjean 7th, Magnussen in 8th. They were very close, within 11/100ths of each other. Gasly in 6th, behind Leclerc. Gasly was actually quite close to Leclerc, only like 100th.
Leclerc had a bit of a shocker, really, to be down there in 5th. And of course, the talk of the weekend was, will the Ferraris bring the fight back to the Mercedes?
No.
Yeah, and what we saw through the practice sessions, and then it played out through quali as well. Bottas, obviously the man of qualifying, 6/10 up on his teammate Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton's usually the king of Spain. Really Bottas showed amazing pace to be up. But,
and then to be overtaken in the first 5 seconds of the race.
Well, we'll talk about the race, but Vettel over 8/10 behind Bottas, which is huge. So, the Ferraris just seem to be a long way off the pace.
I think we've said that literally every episode we've had so far.
Yeah. Well, except for Bahrain, where they look like they're on the pace.
Well.
So great quality by Bottas, Mercedes front row lockout again. And then we get into the race, and I think we just heard it in the commentary, and a lot of people will echo this sentiment, no doubt. But we're in the race, we lights out and away we go, and Lewis gets a marginally better start than Bottas.
They said great start? Not really.
It probably was a great start. It was only marginally better than Bottas's start.
Yeah.
And Vettel had a great start, came around the outside of Bottas, who then got sandwiched in between Lewis and Vettel, then had a big tank slap, a big oversteer moment, and Lewis got him, and really that's pretty much all there is to say.
Yeah.
Not quite. There's a lot more to say, but really that determined the race, as it often does here in Spain. You get through that first corner, then it is so hard to overtake, as we saw today, except for a few people, and one of the great, and it probably won't get talked about a whole lot, but one of the things I liked about the race was Danny Kvyat. He did some great overtakes around the outside.
He ended up finishing 9th, and that was, I think, where he qualified.
Yeah.
But he did some great overtakes as well. So we should, once again, probably start from the beginning. So you already mentioned everything else. It was relatively clean.
Yeah, it was pretty clean getaway, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No crashing or anything like that,
And then,
unfortunately.
Moving on, still boring. It was just boring. In the middle. There was nothing interesting. There were, no overtakes. Leclerc let overtake, Leclerc.
I'm getting some team radio here. Hold on. Let me... Yeah, thanks, Max, for letting me know that. For some reason, my phone's decided to play some team radio on the live time.
So Leclerc overtakes Vettel, and then Vettel overtakes Leclerc, and I think that's where it ended. So there was that sort of battle.
Well, yeah, but once again, we saw Ferrari faffing around. So, Vettel gets that big flat spot early on when he at the start, and therefore, once he kind of lost out to Bottas and Hamilton, just didn't have the pace.
Yeah.
Max, of course, Max Verstappen had a great race, was putting the pressure on, and then we got past Vettel, but then we saw Leclerc hang in behind Vettel, obviously faster. And, us, the commentators, everyone's watching going, just let him pass.
Yeah.
And it took them a long time to make that decision, but eventually they did. And unlike when they let Vettel pass in an earlier race, which I want to say was... China.
Yeah.
And Vettel was let past Leclerc, but then couldn't do anything with it. This time Leclerc did pull away from Vettel, and Vettel lap after lap was saying, "If you can get me off these tyres and put me in a gap, please do it, because I've got no pace." And he really had no pace early in the race.
Yeah.
Further back up the field,
Gasly finished at the back of the top teams again.
Yeah, Gasly had an anonymous race.
Yeah,
he wasn't miles off the pace, though. He was kind of there or thereabouts towards the end. Obviously, everyone was pretty concertinaed up. We had a safety car about, 16 laps from the end when Lance Stroll and Lando Norris came together.
For me, I did not like it because Sainz was on the back of it, but the rest of the people got caught on the front of it with the top teams because they weren't letting the overlapped cars pass the safety car until much later.
Yeah, some people. There's always winners and losers with the safety car, and it really felt like there were some losers, and there was two in particular that stuck out to me. One was Romain Grosjean, who to that point was having a great race. I think he was running in 7th pretty much the whole race. Had the pace over Magnussen.
Well, and one of the winners was Magnussen, who finished in 7th.
That's right.
Because of that safety car.
And we'll have to see how the pit stop strategies played out and who absolutely pitted under the safety car in the end and what tyres they went to.
What I can tell you is that Magnussen was nowhere until the safety car, in which he overtook his teammate Kvyat and Sainz to finish in 7th place.
Yeah, and that fighter, Gunther Steiner would have been, we saw on the Netflix Drive to Survive, Gunther's not shy of dropping a few F-bombs here and there. And I'm sure when he saw Magnussen and Grosjean, I think did they have a bit of contact? Maybe. But they were driving side by side. Grosjean went off the track. This is after the safety car towards the end. He would have been dropping F-bombs left, right and centre. But yeah, so Grosjean either struggled to get his tyres working or got some damage, or I'm not quite sure why he struggled after the safety car. The other person, and and regular listeners will be aware of our bias towards Daniel Ricciardo, but he was hanging in behind Sainz, actually overtook him just before the first pit stops, came out in front of him. He'd been behind Sainz the whole race, overtook him, they pitted, he came out in front, but went to the hard tyre and Sainz went to the medium, and obviously maybe just struggled a little bit with pace in that initial stage of the tyre warm-up. Sainz got him back, then Ricciardo stuck behind him on the hard tyre, stuck within a second to 2 seconds of him. I assume his strategy was to go to the end and have better tyres, but then the safety car struck, and they both went into pit, but clearly Sainz got out in front of the safety car and in front of Albon, who had a bit of a shocker in the pits. The Toro Rosso's double stacked, Kvyat and Albon. Albon, they weren't quite ready with his tyres, so Sainz jumps him, and then Albon and Ricciardo come out behind the safety car, and therefore were just behind Lewis Hamilton. So you had a few runners just behind Lewis Hamilton, and now had to catch up. So once they got released from the safety car, then had to catch up. Now the argument was, but then they got really warm tyres. But yeah, Sainz really got the benefit from that because he got to jump Albon, and then obviously switched his tyres on well after the safety car restart and jumped Kvyat and Grosjean, which was a great result for Sainz. He ended up coming P8. You would have thought he would have been struggled to get into the points.
Just strange mention. Who did they say sounded like a metronome again? Was like a metronome?
Yeah, so that was at the end. Christian Horner talking to Max Verstappen. Max had a really good race. He, ended up on the podium. We should mention that. Oscar and I didn't do a qualifying podcast, but I said to Oscar it'll be Mercedes 1-2 and then Verstappen. So my predictions were right there. He had a great race, just super strong.
And just for the record, Max Verstappen. There you go.
So there's our soundboard special effects. Oscar playing the metronome, and Christian Horner came on and said that he was a metronome because he just had really consistent pace, drove a really strong weekend. Just doesn't have the car to bring it to the Mercedes, but certainly now you feel like, at least in Max's hands, and Gasly wasn't far off the Ferraris. Rather than the Ferraris catching the Mercedes, they've fallen back. Well, let's just say everyone's advanced, but the Mercedes have advanced faster than everyone else, and I would say Red Bull have advanced faster than the Ferraris, and are now. I think Ferrari are now looking backwards, not forwards. They've got to stay ahead of the Red Bulls. And, their chances of catching the Mercedes, you would say, diminishing race by race at this point. So, some pretty disappointing stuff for the Ferraris. But, elsewhere through the grid, obviously we mentioned Magnussen after that safety car just put the pressure on, turned it up. Didn't have a good race until then, but managed to pull out P7. Carlos Sainz getting harassed by Daniel Ricciardo down in, 11 and 12 or 12 and 13 most of the race. Who did pretty well, Oscar? Nico Hülkenberg.
Yeah, he started from the pit lane, so dead last. Overtaked both of the Williams within the first 3 laps, I think.
Yeah, well, that's not a big achievement.
Well, yeah. He overtook Kimi Räikkönen as well with them.
Yeah.
Well, Kimi Räikkönen also, crashed. Well, not crashed, but went off. But he ended up finishing just 1 place behind Ricciardo,
P13,
who started.
Now that was admittedly
7 places.
Yeah, the safety car timing helped him a lot. But and Ricciardo had the pace. So, but he did well to recover there. The Alphas, after a pretty strong start to the season, we were seeing them in Q3 in the points.
I don't think
starting
any
to drop
of them
off.
Scored points.
No, Raikkonen and Giovinazzi down in 14th and 16th, and a nothing race for the Racing Points / Force Indias.
And again, the slow cars are slow.
Perez was nowhere, and then the slow cars are slow. Williams are slow cars are Williams. But Russell beating Kubica as is par for the course. We might at some point touch on the fact that maybe Kubica's not really ready for Formula One. I think a lot of people say, no, but his car is somehow broken and Russell's car is the better car. But
I don't know. Can't they try putting him in Russell's car?
Yeah, they did that earlier, right? They did some swapping and testing of different chassis and stuff. And to be fair, I don't know exactly how that played out, but Russell's, owning Kubica in every single session and in races at this point. How heartbreaking for George Russell after his great Formula 2 season last year. Did he win?
Well,
did he win this season? I think
no,
he did.
Lando Norris did.
Oh, okay, and George Russell came second?
I think.
Or the other way around, right? One of those ways. Nonetheless, how do you go from being podium contender every race to knowing every race you're going to be at the back row? Must be heartbreaking for the guy.
He should get a better drive at some point, unless William just get a better car.
Yeah, so once again, though, we were faced with a bit of a boring race. Mercedes breaking records now with 1, 2, 5 races in a row.
They were breaking records with 3 races in a row, I think.
Three had been done before. At 4, they were breaking records, and now they're just making it hard for anyone to break their record. And let's face it, Oscar, we hope no one ever can break this record because it's boring as all get out watching Mercedes dominate.
I just want to see Bottas win the World Championship now.
Yeah.
I think that'd be cool. I don't think he's ever done it before. So.
Well, the standings now, Lewis Hamilton's now back on top by about 7 points. We should say Lewis got the fastest lap of the race just after the safety car, and he wanted it. He was asking the team, hey, can I go for it? Obviously, fresh tyres, full battery after a safety car. That was the time, and he did it. Obviously pretty pleased. We saw in the interview straight after the race. It's just coming up now. Fastest lap award, 1:18.492. And he actually said, I haven't had one this year. Obviously irked him a little bit not to have one so far. So he now finds himself 7 points ahead of Valtteri Bottas. He's got to be a happy guy. So... and then I'm actually reasonably surprised to see that Max Verstappen is now 3rd in the championship.
Really?
I'm not too surprised, I guess. Yeah, he's 2 points ahead of Sebastian Vettel. So, Max is doing a great job this season, frankly. He's solid. He's delivering what the car can deliver, and is performing at maximum. And excuse the pun. So you'd have to say he's about the only driver besides the Mercedes who's doing that. And actually, Gasly is now starting to be, if not solid,
getting more acclimatized.
Probably getting that axe that's been following him around with Dr. Helmut Marko following him around, ready to axe him. Maybe he's just lowered that axe now and is going, okay, maybe you're catching up with it.
I'm just looking at the...
And then with that great result, K-Mag finds himself now 7th in the championship.
Yeah,
what were you going to say, Matt?
I'm just looking at the result, scrolling through the results from every session, and you can probably guess what they are. Bottas, Hamilton, Bottas, Hamilton.
Yeah.
Those, from FP1 to the race, those are just the top of everything.
There was never a doubt this weekend.
Yeah.
Some weekends you've gone, oh, no, Ferraris are fast, and then they give it away in the race. I mean, if anything, I guess Ferrari fans, the Tifosi probably didn't have their hopes up too much this race, and that's a good thing because, the Ferraris were disappointing again. Mercedes find themselves close to 100 points ahead of Ferrari in the constructors. So I think we can call the constructors right now just about, unless something marvellous happens later in the season for Ferrari or Red Bull.
How far ahead were Mercedes last year in the constructors?
Not this far ahead, because Red Bull had won in China. I think Ferrari would have at least won one by this stage.
Bahrain, I think.
Yeah, all we can hope for now is that Bottas and Hamilton, fight each other all season long, and that becomes a bit exciting. So I think that's what we've got to look forward to. What else? Anything else that took you about this race? You were distracted because you were bored.
Yeah, that happened to me in Australia. Definitely Australia in 2018, but that's another story.
Yeah.
And in China as well, and in Baku as well, and in this race as well.
Well, I tell you what, we head to Monaco next race, and look, it's in a couple of weeks' time, 23rd to 26th of May. What we can say about Monaco...
It will probably be more interesting.
Well, qualifying might be. Monaco is usually less interesting because it's just a big train. It's all about track position.
Yeah.
But with what pace Max Verstappen has been displaying, could he maybe put himself on the front row in quali? We see Red Bull traditionally super strong in Monaco. Daniel Ricciardo, of course, won there last year. And Max is looking pretty strong. The Honda's obviously performing well, pretty reliable. Maybe we can see Max bring it to them, or maybe the Ferraris can bring it to the Mercedes.
There's something I can say about this season is that everyone's getting points, so there's a lot of variety in the midfield. Because the only team that doesn't have points so far is Williams, and the only drivers that don't have points is Giovinazzi and the Williams.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, everyone's getting points.
Yeah, so Grosjean got his 1 point. Has Grosjean only got 1 point now?
Yes.
So that battle at the end where we saw Grosjean, Kvyat and Ricciardo, in fact, it started as a Grosjean, Magnussen, Sainz, Kvyat, Ricciardo train. And that's probably the point in the race where we got our hopes up that Ricciardo was going to come on strong and maybe dip into the points.
Yeah.
Sainz capitalised on that, Magnussen did, and then Kvyat, but he got past Grosjean. But Albon just couldn't get past Grosjean. So Grosjean hung on for his first point of the season, I believe.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, yep. So he will have desperately wanted that. Would have been really heartbreaking if that got taken from him, but nonetheless. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Oscar, anything else to say?
We need to do the happy sad segment again.
You want to do happy sad? Okay,
Yeah.
Based on the Spanish Grand Prix. So let's have a quick rundown.
And for those of you who have not listened to the podcast, happy sad is a segment that we sometimes do, depending on whether we remember to do it or not.
Professional podcasters that we are.
Yeah. Where we rank how happy the drivers would be with their race results and the whole weekend in general.
Okay. So you want to do it. Let's go from bottom to top because that's a bit more interesting. In the DNF, Lando Norris. Oh, Lando, how I love you. That little mistake, he should have backed out. He's definitely sad because his car is now all broken. Real shame. Lance Stroll, he was having a nothing race anyway, but really. And
he's sad
DNF.
anyway.
So
he was sad.
He's always sad.
Even if he didn't DNF, he's sad.
Do you think every time I see him interviewed, he just seems like mopey, like a mopey teenager? Kind of what I expect you to be like in a few years, quite frankly, Oscar. But he's sad. Kubica is perennially sad. George Russell
probably happy he beat Kubica.
Well, he's happy because he's doing the thing he needs to do and the only thing he can do.
And sad because
Williams
his car
were
sucks.
a smidge closer though, weren't they? Williams were a bit closer
They were.
to the rest of the
They're getting
pack.
closer.
They're edging forward, but they had a long way to come from. So Giovinazzi, definitely not happy, right?
No.
He's going to be in trouble of
Hold on.
losing his seat, right? He's done nothing this season.
Yeah, wait, let me just point out, though, that because of that last safety car at the end, the only people who were lapped are the Williams.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they got lapped in the 16 laps after the safety car.
Yeah.
Shows you how slow they are.
Perez?
Perez definitely disappointed. The Racing Points will be very disappointed after this weekend.
Raikkonen sad.
Yeah, Raikkonen disappointed. And then we get to the Renaults of Hülkenberg and Ricciardo.
Probably happy.
Hülkenberg will be happy that he finished just behind his teammate, given that he started from the pit lane.
Ricciardo will be sad.
Ricciardo
He
will
didn't
be
get points.
frustrated.
Yeah.
And much like in his whole season, really, but much like in Baku, where he showed great race pace, he actually had good race pace, but got stuck behind Sainz and then got unlucky with that safety car stint. So he'll be peed off, should I say, and sad. Albon, sad. Well, the Toro Rossos are running up in the points for a lot of that race, and he's one of the guys that lost out a bit because of that bad pit stop.
That sad, but it'll be
He missed points, and he should have got them. So he'll be sad.
Sad. Yep.
Happy to have got a point, but he should have come seventh.
Is anyone happy yet?
No, we're now getting to the happy people.
It was Hülkenberg. Kvyat,
A little
happy. He did a lot of
disappointed.
overtakes. He didn't lose or gain any position.
He will be very happy with his performance and maybe a little disappointed that he didn't get maybe another position. His performance was excellent. For me, he was driver of the day, actually. I know Max Verstappen got voted that, but Kvyat driver of the day for my money.
Came second. Sainz is happy.
Sainz very happy. He's the lucky man of the day. So lucky driver of the day was fighting
Magnussen's
Ricciardo.
pretty lucky as well.
Magnussen was up there the whole time though. Sainz should have been in front of Ricciardo or behind him.
Yeah.
The safety car really helped him.
I'm sad because Sainz is happy.
And the Spanish crowd are happy because Carlos Sainz is the king of Spain, even though earlier I said Lewis Hamilton was. He's
Magnussen's happy. We already talked about that.
Magnussen happy. Gasly satisfied.
Happy. Just happy.
Satisfied that he wasn't miles and miles behind Vettel this time. Verstappen. Leclerc, sad. Vettel, Sad.
Sad.
Verstappen,
Happy.
delighted, I would
Yeah.
say. He's the guy maximising his performance.
And
Bottas, what do you think of Valtteri? How do you
sad.
think Valtteri...
I'm just saying sad.
You think
he
Valtteri's
lost a
sad?
place. He probably wanted a first.
Yeah. And he's lost a little momentum now, and you don't want to give Lewis any momentum because then he runs away with it. But
And then
yeah, so
Lewis,
you could tell.
happy.
Lewis, and kind of that grim, like, yeah, okay, good, now I'm back on top. So kind of satisfied, more than happy. Lewis won't be happy till the end of the year, and he's got the
Of
championship.
course. He's not even happy when he gets the championship.
Happy because, he's in a great team and it's a team sport and, the usual
And God bless you.
platitudes from Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, great fans, the best fans ever in Spain. So
Oh, that's true.
Good. Okay, well, that's a wrap from us. I said at the beginning of the podcast we might go back and analyse it. We may still do that now that this has run 25 minutes. We should wrap it up. If we have any further thoughts, we might do a bit of a podcast given it's 2 weeks to the next race, after a little bit of analysis and seeing the other interviews. But that's us. Please follow us on Twitter at Formula One and Son.
And Reddit.
You can see us on Reddit at Formula One and Son.
Without the at.
Yeah, with the
But
r slash.
At r/Formula One and Son.
If you want to talk to us at all, if you're listening on the usual things where you can subscribe and rate, then please do. We'd appreciate it.
And also on our Reddit, if you send us a message or reply, we will reply back.
Oscar, one more thing, he says.
Another thing.
Formula One is coming to Chicago.
Oh, yes, it is. The Fan Festival.
Yeah, so we live in Chicago, and it's been announced in the last week that the Fan Festival will be at Soldier Field, I think June 8th.
Yes.
And it will be free. Formula One and Son will be attending, and we will be at least recording live, if not broadcasting live from the festival.
We can broadcast live?
Yeah, we can broadcast live on Spreaker, which is where we host our podcast. We can broadcast live. So if we get an opportunity, we'll do that, but we'll at least be recording some of the action at the Formula One Fan Festival to let you listeners know, if you're at other places where the Formula One Fan Festival comes, what it's like and what that experience is like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, we probably should set up a Gmail account for this podcast, so we will let you know if we do another episode about that.
We certainly will, but we'll announce our attendance at the Formula One Fan Fest on Twitter at Formula One and Son. So that's it from us. Thanks for listening to Formula One and Son. I'm Tom.
And I'm Oscar.
Talk to you next time.